of building.
Wait. Jeff said you're not going yet.
Didn't he say to go?
Now you're going.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our regular discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses, like all these fine people out here in our audience.
That's right. We are live from the Fine Home Building Summit, Southbridge, Massachusetts.
At the Southbridge Hotel and Conference Center.
Am I stealing your lines? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I am joined by Rob Wadsack and three special guests. Justin Fink, our current editorial director.
Current?
For now.
Our past editorial director. You were editor, right, Kevin?
We didn't
Ireton?
have that position when you were at the company, Kevin.
Yeah, it was just editor.
Yeah.
Just editor.
And longtime contributor Scott McBride. And I want to thank all of you guys for being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So, Kevin is the editor who trained me. I owe a lot of my success to this man right here. And
How did I do?
You did excellent. I have not been fired yet.
Kevin, I'd say he did a great job because I remember when I first started working here, Justin was not, the manager he is now. So
that's not
How
saying
long
much.
ago was that, Justin?
I've been with Fine Home Building for 15 years, and when did you leave, Kevin?
I left 10 years ago.
There you go. We had 5 years of overlap.
Very cool.
And Mr. Scott McBride down at the end, I cut my teeth reading his articles.
It's not a good sign when they start calling you Mister.
Yes. And so I felt it was appropriate that when I moved up to the top, Kevin, I bring Scott McBride back into the fold to write for us every issue.
Perfect. But I want to get Scott to tell a little story. The rumor is that you first started writing for the magazine because you had a little construction accident. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. I was hurt in the fall and was looking for something to pass the time while my bones...
To make some money from your lost income, I presume.
Right,
Yes.
Right. So I had been a reader, actually, since the magazine opened up. And the architect we were working with at the time contacted Taunton Press and hooked up their editors with our project. And that led to an article on the framing of the roof.
When was that, Scott?
That was in 1983.
And what kind of roof were you documenting or talking about in the magazine article?
In that article, it had a number of unusual features, a tower and.
So Kevin wants to weigh in on this clearly.
It was about irregular roof framing.
Mm-hmm.
And as I heard, it nearly killed 3 editors trying to work on that story. It was the most complicated roof framing article that the magazine's ever published.
Have we done a roof framing article since then?
It was brilliant, but it was complicated.
Oh, Kevin, when you said it nearly killed 3 editors, I thought you meant on the photo shoot.
No, just trying to edit the article.
Mm-hmm. What was it complicated, Scott, or were they just lacking in intellect?
It was a lot of geometry, connect point A with point C and divide by the tangent, et cetera, et cetera. My uncle called it Scott's recipe for the atomic bomb when he read it. So.
And we should point out for anybody who doesn't know Scott that among his most impressive work was the restoration of James Madison's house. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
Do you know the name of that house, Justin?
Montpelier.
It is.
Yes.
I had to look up whose house it was when he told me Montpelier.
I get all confused because Thomas Jefferson designed it, so I started, they were all buddies back then. But that was a 3-year long project.
3 years.
How does a builder get chosen for that project? That seems like a pretty
short list.
And on top of that, how do you bid that project?
Well, I didn't bid it. It was done by the hour, but it was just serendipitous. I had worked for some of the people who were administering the project on a project that was closer to me, which was not a historical project, but we sort of got our toe in the water down there, and more stuff started coming on our plate, so I had to expand the crew, and I was fortunate to contact the North Bennett Street School in Boston to find qualified people to help out.
So you needed restoration carpenters from their program, I presume.
Yeah.
And you called them up and said, "Send me carpenters."
Well, I explained the problem, and they put a notice on their electronic bulletin board, and I interviewed a couple of folks, and they turned out great.
Scott, was the problem, hey, I got hired to renovate Montpelier and I don't know how to renovate Montpelier?
No, but it's just the scale of the project.
Yeah.
When it became evident that we needed to ramp up. Living in a rural area, you have
Right.
a limited pool of people you can
Yeah.
draw upon, but speaking to them, greatly expanded my reach in terms of manning up for the job.
So tell me, what are the biggest challenges with managing a project like that for the Park Service, I presume?
It was for the Montpelier Foundation, which had, received a very large gift to
Restore
the building to the Madison period. It had been extensively remodeled by the DuPont family at the turn of the last century.
They owned it prior, I gather?
Well, the Madison family had owned it from the 1740s to the mid-1800s, and then the DuPonts bought it in 1900 and made this very...
They ruined it.
Clearly.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but
changed
they changed the character of the building, and so we were tasked with bringing it back to the
What is
Madison
the
period.
big challenge with doing a project like that?
Well, there were several things that were different about it. One of them was that before we could do any kind of demolition or reconstruction, we had to have the site itself cleared by the archaeologists. It was almost like clearing a minefield because the site was a potential source of clues to how the Madison family lived at the time that they were doing that we were trying to recreate. And I lost sight of that fact one day when we were tasked with reconstructing the cornice on one end of the building, and the grade came down rather steeply there, and not thinking about this, I told my guys, well, just chop out for the feet of the scaffold to level it up.
And an
archaeologist passed by, yeah, and I was in big trouble, and there was nothing I could do about it, but promised to try to do better.
Did they
in the
start
future.
sifting through your spoils of the scaffold
Well,
holes?
I don't know if they did, but that was the standard procedure
Yeah.
beforehand to go through it all, even the trash, and in one instance they actually found one of Madison's letters in little bits in a mouse's nest, and they were trying to put it all back together so they could
Sounds
read it.
great.
And I question my career choices.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So when you opened up the walls, did you have them at every step of the way saying, well, you got to hold on a minute here?
It was kind of like that. Yeah, they were breathing over our shoulders, and also we were working at that time in the attic, and they were continuing to have tours right below us. Like the plaster on the ceiling had been removed, and all that was left was the wood lath, and you saw these innocent people passing below, and I'm like, oh, what if one of these beams falls on top of the docent, and there's an insurance claim? It's kind of creepy.
Man.
And you're still taking on projects now, right?
Actually, I'm trying to build up more of a woodworking business.
Making furniture?
Millwork,
Uh-huh.
mostly, yeah.
Cool.
Very cool.
Kevin, what brought you to this endeavor here in Fine Home Building? And I'd like your story, because when I started reading Fine Home Building, you were the editor and probably had been for a few years. And I can tell you all, this is a career highlight with being around all these people that we have looked up to and learned from for decades now.
Yeah. When I planned the summit, I pretty much just chose everybody that I wanted to have.
Exactly. Well, you want to have a conversation
Who we
with.
wanted to hang out with
Yeah.
for a couple of days. But then Kevin showed up, so.
I came because this is 2 hours from my house, and I just couldn't miss it. I mean, in all the years that I worked at Fine Home Building, we talked about doing events like this. We would go to JLC Live and say, why aren't we doing this? But we could never quite convince the powers that be to take it on. I know that originally when Paul Roman, who founded the company, was running things, he just kind of felt like, well, we make magazines. That's what we're good at.
Yep.
But I don't think he ever experienced something like JLC Live, which literally is articles come to life. And so when Fine Home Building, finally got in a position to do this, I just wanted to be here to witness.
It's cool.
Yeah.
What made you try and pull this off, Justin? Whose idea and how long did it take and what was involved?
It was so we've been planning this event for months and months and months and lining everything up. And then I sat down at lunch today with Scott, and Scott said, "So what's the deal? Why are you having this event?" And I didn't have an answer to that question after the 9,000 other questions I'd answered about this thing. No, but basically, and I'm gonna speak to this later when we have a little welcoming speech. But
You're doing that?
yes.
Okay.
After another beer. But it will, basically, I was standing around at JLC Live last year, and I was kind of standing back from our booth, and I was looking around and taking stock of where we were, what everybody was doing, and I felt like, all right, we did a podcast. A lot of people have podcasts now, so
Yep.
we gotta up our game. We're doing video. A lot of people have video now. We're competing with YouTube. So where do we go next? And it wasn't really that we're going in an innovative direction by having an event, but I wanted to do something different than what you're going to find at, say, JLC Live or even at the Builders Show. I wanted to have an intimate, multiple days, all jammed together in a remote location where there's no outside attractions that are going to make you go, hey, we should head downtown and go out for dinner.
And
Like,
not
I
come
want there to, no offense to Southbridge, I want there to be nothing around here so that you're all captive audience. And I wanted to just get everybody that I looked up to as builders and designers, architects, historians, get them all in a room and not try and control what they talked about. Just say, what's on your mind? I want you to teach for 90 minutes. I want there to be lots of time for questions. I want there to be lots of time in between sessions for people to hang out and talk to each other and get to know each other and solve problems and beat up solutions to high performance building. And it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. You're all part of our social experiment. We're gonna see what happens by Friday, and I'm hoping we'll all be better for it.
How could we not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely excited. I want to be in every one of the classes, and I think the hardest part about this is going to be figuring out what to attend and what I have to miss.
So I don't know if you do, but the rest of the editorial staff will all be represented in every seminar.
Yes, we have the full Fine Home Building staff here, minus a couple of production people who are stuck at the office trying to shoehorn an issue out the door.
It goes to the press on Wednesday?
Next week, Wednesday, yeah. We're in good shape, though. It's all right, everybody.
I still will have to get my department in, but
Yeah, Patrick is late, but everybody else is.
So, Justin, one thing that in talking about why we're all here and seeing all the conversations that are happening around us, it reminds me of when we were back at IBS this year at the Keep Craft Alive meetup, and
we should tell folks what that is first of all. What we did there.
Well, basically, Keep Craft Alive started 2 years ago?
I think he's talking about the event.
Yeah,
the event.
Okay. They don't know.
Yeah.
About the event.
So while we were at the International Builders Show in Vegas, through Keep Craft Alive, we had a meetup where we just wanted to get people together to start talking about trades and what they're doing in the trades, rather than just. It used to be just a fundraising effort for people who were going into the trades, and we realized that it was so much more than that, we see every day what people are doing on Instagram, sharing all kinds of tips and ideas and inspiration, but we realized at this meetup that was just the tip of the iceberg in the amount of communication that's happening through those channels, and how many people are connecting to people that in their industry that they never would have before. One guy in one part of California is direct messaging another guy, ask how he would bid on a project. And these are resources that people didn't have before. And in a lot of ways, they're more similar to a personal event like this, where you're actually talking to people from around the country about the things that you're doing on the job every day in a way that you couldn't before.
These people have so much shared experience, right?
Right.
And I find it so easy to talk to any of the people here. I'm kind of shy by nature, but at the line to check in, I felt very much, you're laughing. You're like, you're not. But I was like, it's very easy to talk to builders about what they do. I love it.
Yes.
And we all get to do that here.
Yeah, we basically created an event where we could hang out with everybody that we wanted to hang out with.
That's the best
Sorry.
party ever. Do any of you all have questions for us or for our panel of guests? Or can you maybe tell us what you hope to get out of this event? Or open up the mic to the floor if anyone's interested.
Well, we got a couple of the presenters in the room. We got Martin Holliday, who's
Martin, you want to put your hand up
he's
there?
He's gonna be speaking.
Industry luminary.
Mr. Michael Maines.
Another industry luminary.
Yes. I guess that's it. Brent Hall was in the back. He stepped out. I'm particularly excited to see Brent. He was a little bit of a he was kind of a slightly off tangential guest to this because he's not a high performance builder guy.
His specialty is historical millwork. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so I felt I'm such a lover of old houses, and again, I selfishly put this thing together and thought, well, I don't have Brent Hull there.
Sure.
I want to hear what he has to say. So I'm really excited for that.
Yes.
What else do we have coming up? What are you excited to see, Patrick?
I am very much looking forward to Ben Bogey's presentation on if your walls are getting wet, nothing else matters.
Yes.
And I'm paraphrasing the title of the piece, but as a builder, that is really all that matters. If you have a building that can't stay dry, then nothing else matters.
Right. Yep.
What are you most psyched about?
I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing Peter Yost. I mean, I've actually videotaped some of his presentations before because he was when we started Green Building Visor about almost exactly a little over 10 years ago.
Yep.
He was always a major part of that effort to get building science out to the home building community at large, and I feel like we've come a long way with that. And he is just one of the first and strongest presenters I've seen on the fundamental.
What's he presenting on?
He's building science fundamentals.
I have heard from Steve Basic, another presenter, a guy that I think a lot of people look up to in terms of his stature in the building community. Steve describes Peter's fundamental course as the best presentation that you can have in this industry.
I didn't sign up for that one.
Like it is, you don't have to sign up for anything.
Well,
Just show up whatever you want to see.
And the thing
we
is,
should say there's going to be a number of these presentations available online for people on YouTube also after the fact.
yeah, we're definitely going to use this as a platform to expand upon the information that everyone's going to be learning in person here today.
Yep.
And
At least for a
sharing that.
handful of them.
Yep.
We won't give it all away, everybody. Some of it.
Okay.
What's the how many people do we have here?
We got a little over everybody included 250 people.
That was pretty much a full house, as I understand it.
We're pretty much at capacity, which is awesome. We're very excited. This is our first ever summit. We're hoping to. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too soon without confirmation of this, but we are hopefully going to be also including a design summit later, earlier in 2020. So my vision for this is that we have alternating events, one focused mostly on building techniques, one focused mostly on design techniques.
Annually? Or two a year?
2 per year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll see. We'll see if we can pull it off. A lot of it's going to depend on the reaction we get here, but so far, so good.
Do you have a
I will say no more.
Presenters?
No more.
Presenters?
I will say that there will be lots of familiar names. One at the very top of my list is Marianne Cusado. We will definitely rope her into this.
She's got chops.
She was going to be here, but she had a conflict at the last minute.
I don't
and
think you want to say grope her into this.
Rope,
Oh, rope.
Scott.
I've talked to people already from Austin and Phoenix and Alabama and I want to say Southern California, Manhattan. Like, folks are coming from all over. I'm pleased.
I know, and I've had conversations with the presenters to make sure that they are region agnostic with some of their lessons. So we're going to make sure that this is not we are in New England, but we're going to make sure this is not a New Englanders talking to New Englanders kind of a thing. We have Christy Williamson here, who's
Is she Building Science Fight Club?
She's Building Science Fight Club on Instagram. She is a relation of Joe Stiebrick.
Really?
And yep.
Daughter?
Daughter. And she will be here talking about stucco, which I am extremely excited about.
You know that's near and dear to my heart.
Well, I personally think that stucco is going to be the top headline for our industry for the next coming year.
It's the EIFS of
it has not landed with its full impact yet, but the comet is headed towards us, and you're about to hear a lot about it. So I would not miss that one if you have anything to do with stucco.
And a lot of folks do.
And a lot of folks do. I would
And
say
you're
most
probably
parts of the
doing it
country.
wrong.
But anyway, I got on a tangent. We're going to try and make sure that all parts of the country are represented, whether it's a heating climate, cooling climate. There should be something here for everybody.
What are you most? What do you think is going to get the most buzz amongst our participants in our summit?
Well, let's see.
I mean, Steve is always a dramatic presenter. He's just charismatic and fun.
Right after we're done recording this, we're going to all get together in a room, and Peter Yost is going to give his prediction for where we're going to be in 20 years, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yep.
And that's the kind of guy who you want to hear that from. And then tomorrow night during dinner, we're going to give the microphone to Steve Basic and just let him
Rip.
And that will for sure be entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the two that I'm most excited about. Except I feel like I should say I'm excited about Mike Maines and Martin Holliday because they're in the room.
Yes, you should.
No, I will say that not just because they're in the room. You do not want to miss Martin or Mike.
I'm signed up for both of them.
These are like some of the most respected practitioners of the craft and science of building that you can get anywhere.
Amen.
Yeah.
Do any of you guys have any questions? Ready to drink some beer?
Get me out of here and bring up.
Go ahead.
You do not have to
You do
sign
not
up
have
for
to
classes.
sign up for classes. What they've asked the editorial staff to do is to make sure that we're somebody is there for every session. So when I say signed up, that's what I mean. So sorry for the confusion.
Patrick, can I volunteer myself to step out and invite Mike up?
Yeah.
Mike,
Well,
you want to come up?
he asked.
You have to.
Yeah.
Let the speakers talk.
How come you get to invite yourself out?
I'm in charge.
I'm not going to
was my
stop him.
first mistake.
Yeah.
So, funny story about Justin. He'd been working at the magazine as an intern at first, and then we hired him as an editorial assistant, I think, maybe assistant editor. And I probably hired him because he was a smart ass.
Wasn't talent.
But one time, I remember asking him, Justin, when were you born? And his answer was, issue 6. Which, I knew was December of 1981, but not many other people would have. But again, that was that kind of attitude that got him hired.
He still has that same intellectual curiosity, which has helped him survive, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back in this is Mike Maines. I stutter, so sorry. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was spending a lot of time on Fine Homebuilding's Break Time Forum, which was really...
aggravating?
No. Well, it was exciting. It was an exciting time in the world of the internet. It was a new thing. Like it was before Instagram, before Facebook, before any of this stuff. And I think when it started, there was maybe 500 of us on there or something, but like 20 active people just sharing tips and ideas and arguing and talking politics and getting flamed and all that good stuff. And this kid started, 20-something-year-old kid started coming in and asking stupid questions and had kind of an interesting name and just sort of stuck around. And turns out he's now runs the magazine.
Goes to show. Yeah. When did you get introduced to the brand?
When did I get introduced to the brand? Well, my wife worked at Fine Gardening for 15 years, and I actually applied to be a print editor a couple of times, but got beat out by Rob Yagid and by, what's his name, from the West Coast. The guy who used to do all the videos. Why am I blanking? Anyway.
Chuck Miller?
No. Well, anyway, so...
Larry Hahn.
Yeah, Larry Hahn.
That's when you were new.
But yeah, so I remember I first got interested in building science when I went to JLC Live and I saw Joe Stiebrick talk. And it was one of the few sessions at that where, like, there's good and decent and mediocre classes there, and you're excited when you get a decent one. And at the end of his presentation, he was like, "Okay, I got a little more time. Does anybody else want me to keep going?" And we're like, "Yeah."
Cool.
And that was like my first introduction to building science. And I, at that time, was working for Hudson Valley Preservation, where Andy Engel, one of our former editors, currently works. And So we were kind of mixing historic preservation and building science and trying to do the best we could for these old houses. And so I had no practical experience in editing, publishing, web, anything like that. But I convinced, this was 2008 when they were just getting ready to build GBA. And I convinced Dan Morrison that I was excited enough and a fast learner, and that's when I got on board. And right before Martin got on board, he and I were there, about 6 months or so before they started building, before we launched the website. And
I was in on that caper too.
yeah,
Yeah, I wrote some freelance content for GBA when it was launching.
yeah,
It's lived up to its promise, I would say. The product, the website, and the community are a dazzling amount of information and smart people who get together and help each other out. It's quite an impressive accomplishment, Martin. I think the product it's so far beyond anything else that is like it.
We were excited when we were building Green Building Advisor for the potential, and I felt like a little wind was taken out of our sails because right around the time we were launching it is when the stock market crashed.
Yes,
and
the crash of the building business generally.
So the momentum that green building was having at the time, I was worried, that it was going to
People
fall
would be
flat.
too practical.
But right off the bat, an amazing community of people developed there organically because they knew Martin was there, because they knew Peter Ost was there, because they knew a lot of these really passionate, really talented, knowledgeable people were there. And to this day, that same vibrant community of people, like if I know that if I have a question about building science or working on my old house, if I post it there, that I will get an amazing answer in a very short amount of time.
And it might come from Michael Maines, who hangs
Yeah.
out there.
Yep.
What do you think about that website? Do you think it fills the need for progressive builders who want to do the right thing? Or
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. I mean, I was at a meeting in Brattleboro before it launched, and they were still doing sort of figuring out what it wanted to be, and I was pushing for a strong Q&A section just from spending a lot of time on Fine Homebuilding's break time. I saw that need for a community that hadn't really been wasn't really a strong thing in the internet world yet, and I'm really happy to see how the Q&A section has evolved. Of course, all Martin's, like, if you want to know anything, I still every day, what's the ratio for this, or what do I need to do?
he can teach you how to do anything.
Martin has written about it, so it's there. And no, it's amazing that it's evolved into such a go-to, reliable, not advertiser-driven resource. Just it's agnostic in terms of anti-foam, anti-whatever. It's just there's, or not anti. There's not an agenda other than sharing solid building science information. And
Peer to peer, not driven by someone's ad dollars or whatever. It's just
yeah, exactly.
good,
I think
smart people sharing their information.
I think I'm pretty typical. I probably when I know an answer to something, I feel like I want to share what I've learned, but it's probably 50-50 what I share and what I learn. I still learn stuff there every day.
Me too.
There's too much to know everything. So
Agreed. So what kind of work are you doing now, Michael?
I've been trying to do design build for a couple of years, and I live in the middle of nowhere, and it's a tough slog. So I'm back to design only, at least for now. I still have my construction LLC. It's not going anywhere. I have tools. I'll get back to it someday. But for now, I've got a couple of net zero new houses and a bunch of renovations lined up.
Are they local or are they further afield?
Most everything is within about an hour and a half of my house, which is kind of next door where I live in central
In rural Maine, yeah. Sure.
A lot in Portland and Brunswick and along the coast, and a few other projects here and there.
What I hear people complaining about oftentimes is they want to build an efficient home. They want to build a net zero home. They want to build a passive house, or they just want to build a pretty good house. And they always complain that it's very difficult to find a builder who can do that for them. And I'm sure it's challenging. What would you tell that person who's looking for somebody who cares about the buildings that they build?
I agree that it's hard to find a good builder.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's really what kind of got me back into construction. I mean, I've always bounced back and forth between design and construction, but I was having a hard time finding builders within 40 miles of my house who, even the builders who said that they would,
Work with you.
work with me and wanted to know like what I thought a good way to build was. As soon as the design was done and I was out of the picture, they would talk the client right back into all their usual ways of doing things, and just it's incredibly frustrating.
Sure.
When you're trying to push the envelope. But as an architect, I'm not an architect, I'm a designer. But as an architect or designer, you have control over that first stage, which is the planning, and then you hand it over to the builder, and you can stay on and try to keep things going. But just on a lot of residential projects, the builder then has all the control, so it's hard to maintain control. So that's going to become a mission of mine, is to try to get builders up to speed on current building science. Just it's not 1970 anymore. Like, there are new ways to build, and it's not that difficult. There's all these new products available. There's the internet. You can get anything you need. It's all right there. You just have to understand it and want it.
And forgive me for being so simplistic, but clients have money to spend.
Some do.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yes.
and if you can't...
If you could send some towards me, that would be great.
So, on Michael's point, one thing I've noticed, because I've worked closely with a handful of architects and builders who are passionate about energy efficient construction, and one thing I do notice is that, the typical relationship that people talk about between architects and builders is this contentious, like they're drawing a line in the sand between what one thinks is practical and what one thinks is the right thing to do. And but I've worked closely with a bunch of architects and builders who are passionate about building energy efficient homes, and I find it's a very different relationship. Once a pair of designers and builders find that common ground on something that they both really care about, that it becomes, even if it isn't a design build firm, they get almost that same kind of relationship going. And it's exciting to see, because it is kind of sad to me to hear about the jokes people make about, how architects don't know what they're talking about and how builders ignore everything.
Both are true.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to jump in on the question of, if a homeowner is trying to find a builder to do high-performance work. First of all, I agree with Mike that, good builder's hard to find regardless. But the point I would make, I guess, is that you don't have to find a builder with long experience in high performance. You have to find a good builder who's willing. And a case in point would be Steve Demetric, who's a builder in Rhode Island that I visited about a month ago. And he's worked on 2 passive houses with Steve Basic. And he built, the first one that he built, he'd never built one before. And he'd never done work at that level before. But he was an excellent craftsman who cared and wanted to keep learning and improve his craft. And the information's out there. So if you've got the attitude and you want to do good work, then you can find out how to do high performance, especially with resources like GBA. So I would say, don't give up if nobody in your area specializes in high performance. Just find the best builder you can that's willing to learn.
Scott, what do you think the biggest challenges are for the residential building sector going forward? And is it something we're paying attention to, like the labor shortage or decreasing forest resources? Or what do you think we're going to be faced with is our biggest challenge in this crazy industry?
Well, there's no doubt that climate change is going to change everything in a monstrous way. I recently read a book called The Code Girls about the code breaking during the Second World War. And before the war, the group of people dealing with code breaking was very small. It was a small group of academics at the University of Chicago, and it had no real practical importance. And then the war broke out, and suddenly there was this massive need for code breaking, and the machinery started to gear up to bring people into this discipline by the busload. And soon there were thousands of women housed in temporary barracks near Washington, D.C., working with pencil and paper to break the Japanese codes. And within a few months, that work enabled the victory at the Battle of Midway, which was fought with torpedoes and fighter planes, but what was really behind it was this theoretical work by people that didn't even know they were going to be doing this a year before. And so when I got the invitation to come here, what really excited me was to be in a group of seminal people, minds, that were going to be looked to solve the crisis that's coming our way. I mean, the scientists are telling us that the rate that we've been adapting is nowhere near what needs to happen. And I don't want to get political, but we've had a very unfortunate recent period of sticking our head in the sand and going backwards. But I feel that when that ice breaks up, and the American people collectively start applying themselves to this problem, we can do amazing things.
Do you think the
But
building...
you guys are suddenly going to become in incredible demand, like those
Code breakers.
Those code breakers were.
Do you think the building industry is up to the challenge?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. But you know, a certain component of the carbon we have to eliminate, a big component of it comes from
Housing.
buildings. You know?
Buildings and building houses.
You can get some from transportation, you can get some from electrical generation, but a big chunk of it is gonna have to come out of the buildings that people live in, and somehow it's gonna have to be solved. And the knowledge that we have to date, in a way, it seems pitifully small compared to the challenge, but that's what we've got to work with. So,
What do you think, Kevin? You think we're up to it?
You've just hit me right where I live these days. I just finished reading David Wallace Wells' book, Uninhabitable Earth, which is about the planet after warming. So I wrestle a lot with these things. What I know is that this industry, because it's composed of so many small builders, can be very nimble. Change can happen quickly. The question is, will it? And I do think that there are big changes that can happen quickly, especially with just the recognition of the importance of low carbon materials.
But we can't even get builders to build to the current code.
I know.
What is going to motivate them?
another hurricane.
Do you think? Is it a cataclysmic thing?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Sure.
What do you think, Michael?
I think client demand has to drive a lot of it. Just builders, it's hard, when you're talking with a client and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's hard to convince them to spend a few extra tens of thousands of dollars because you're worried about something that
They don't necessarily
that they
worry
don't
about.
necessarily, yeah, exactly. And I will say, my blood type is O negative, and my wife says tends to be my personality, and she's B positive, and it fits. It's a good match. But I can't think of any exceptions. The high performance builders I know, and I know a lot of both personally and through Instagram and social media. I know a lot of high performance builders, and it's pretty much without exception. It's the people who have mastered the craft in other ways. They're amazing woodworkers, they're timber framers, just they are interested in the pinnacle. And it seems like almost everybody in high performance building, like you don't think of air sealing and insulation. I mean, that's in installing good windows, that's the crux of high performance building. It's not that exciting compared to let's make this crazy cool joint with this exotic wood, but it's
Sure.
the people who get bored with making this crazy cool exotic joint, and they're like, I want to do something bigger and better. And those are the people that move to high performance building. So I think it's important for people, the kind of builders, and designers, architects who are coming to a place like this, who are at the top of the industry. It's important for those people to be leading the charge. If they're the ones, if they're making it cool to do, a pretty good house or a passive house or a living building challenge house, once that becomes cool and clients want it, and then the rest of the gang is going to come along behind them. So I am optimistic.
But it's We got a long way to go.
We have a long way to go and not much time to get there, so.
But you all are part of the solution, I can tell you, right? These are the folks that are come here and trying to improve themselves and build better buildings. I thank you, all of you.
Well said.
Well, this has been the Fine Home Building Podcast. It seems kind of anticlimactic to do the normal end read, so I'm not going to, but I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you have a great time. I guarantee you're going to learn something. Thank you so much for coming.